Hello friends, welcome to the EduSite Network. First of all, I would like to wish all the teachers a very happy Teachers' Day and the same to our subject expert. And now proceeding to what we are going to talk about today is postmodernism. For this we have this in the studio the same subject expert, Dr. Anand Prakash. He has taught English literature in Delhi University for more than 4 decades, and he has recently edited 2 books with long introductory essays. One is The Critic Shakespeare, Essays in Appreciation and Subalterns in Shakespeare, a post-colonial review. These are 2 books, The Critic Shakespeare and Subalterns in Shakespeare. Each of these contains an exhaustive analytical discussion by him on Shakespeare's plays. These 2 books were published in 2010 and 2012 respectively by the Shakespeare Association. Apart from giving lectures as a resource person in refresher courses organized by various universities in the last few decades, he has read papers, chaired plenary sessions, and delivered keynote addresses in national and international conferences. He also gave the Edward Said Memorial Lecture in Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, a few years ago. And with this, we would like to welcome Sir and thank him for being here with us today, and also request him to begin our today's lecture. Thank you for coming, Sir.
Thanks, Roshi. And viewers, today's topic, we straight away come to this. This topic is very challenging, as a few others also, which all emerged, as themes in the 1980s. And postmodernism is supposed to be little more complex than the rest. For instance, earlier we discussed not just structuralism but also post-structuralism, and we have discussed modernism, and today we go into postmodernism. Now, the word post is quite popular these days, so anything that worked in the field of culture and theory becomes post today. So this kind of a trend has continued, and it's unending trend. For instance, you would have also heard of post-feminism. You would have heard of post-Marxism. There are of course always post-revolutionary societies and things like that. There is some truth in the post, but then trends don't come to a stop on a particular day, nor do they emerge on a particular day, and these things continue. But some people, take the initiative of introducing certain new aspects in a discipline, and they start by saying that they are saying something which exactly is rooted in the present of their time. Anyway, modernism and postmodernism, these two in fact are supposed to be continuous with each other. Postmodernism can be extended, modernism can be extended to postmodernism, but then postmodernists say that it's totally, entirely different. It's radically new, and therefore one should not confuse it with modernism at all. So this is the kind of stress that they lay. The second point of a general nature that I want to make right in the beginning is that most of the vocabulary and nomenclature of theory is forged in the university departments of the Western societies. And these people, are experts, they are specialists, they work, quite long every day, and they write books, they produce papers, they produce new arguments, and this thing continues. And it's as a result of this that every 10 years or 15 years, a new trend emerges in the field of thought. Now, it's a sign of progress, but it's also an indication of circularity, as if, the ideas emerge so fast, and they become irrelevant also so fast after some time. So maybe postmodernism is a product of this particular trend that continues in the West. Straight away, as a person from India and as a person who has taught in an Indian university, I become aware that such trends do not emerge here. They do not emerge in third world countries. And mostly we look towards the Western societies for giving us these new ideas, and then we adopt them mostly uncritically. So that's a kind of a bane with us. We should critically examine them. Of course, ideas cannot be divided neatly into the Western or the Eastern ideas. There are lots of ideas which we should take from the West, and there are certain others which the West should take also from India. That kind of interchange is vital to the development of knowledge. But in this case, what I see, sadly, is that we are uncritically accepting whatever is being offered by the Western societies, particularly America and Western Europe. And you know that in a particular way, scholars are gathering, from all corners of the West in the American academia, and therefore postmodernism has been particularly, it can be seen as rooted in the American ethos, because it talks about that modernism which is of today and which is truly modern, and this should not be confused with the modernism of the 1920s and 30s. So with these 2 points, I begin the discussion, and the writers, that I just pick up for helping me to, present the argument would be 2 or 3. The major one among these people is Jean-François Lyotard, a French scholar, and he is supposed to be, the spokesperson of postmodernism in the best sense of the word. And his book, famous book, The Postmodern Condition, that was published in 1984, in translation, of course, it was in French. Then the differend, this word you may not have heard what differend is, but I think he's playing on the word difference. So it's more than difference, and maybe it's particular, more than different, or whatever. Then he's not merely talking of division of one thing with the other, but he's also talking of some kind of a connection, therefore he coins a new word. Then just gaming. Now it's interesting to see how he's giving titles to his books, because particularly just gaming means that he's just playing. He's not very serious, and he sets a lot of store by gaming. As you play games in language, as you play games in thought, as you play as we play game in conversation, and we regale one another, we entertain one another through use of words. So this is what the postmodernist thinkers are fond of doing also in the book. So he says, please do not take me at my word, because I am only gaming. Maybe he's saying that. But then these are the phrases that are used by the major thinker of postmodernism called Lyotard. Then you have Baudrillard. Now look at his book, the title Simulations, 1983. It's published around the same time as Lyotard. And simulation, I looked for the exact meaning of the word in the dictionary, and the word is to pretend or have, or to pretend to have or feel. So even if you have a thing, actually you are pretending to have it. If you feel something, then you are pretending to feel it. Now this is something difficult to get, difficult to grasp, because if I am adopting something, then I am adopting. But then the postmodern will tell me that I am only pretending to be adopted. So there is a kind of a doubt that is instilled in the very use of the word that we use in order to express a phenomenon. And then he has a whole concept called simulacrum, which is explained as an image of something. So what does he mean by saying that the society in which we live is a society where things appear to be so? They may not be actually so, they appear to be so, and that mostly we are not in touch with what is called the reality, we are in touch with the image of reality. So if I see a chair in front of me, then I am not seeing the chair at all. I am seeing an image of the chair. If I am talking to somebody, then I am talking to that person as a kind of person who presents images to him, and vice versa, that person, he or she, is presenting images to me. So the real is unreal and the unreal is real, and both can be confused. So that kind of an idea is put forward by Baudrillard in his book Simulations, and see the word in plural, which means that simulations keep happening all the time. And if you extend the meaning of simulacrum further, then it is a shadowy likeness, a deceptive substitute, and a mere pretense. So now we understand what just gaming means. That when we say something, when we hear something, then only a kind of a gaming is happening. and that it's a pretense. Nobody is serious in this world. And of course, now you think of the way ideas are expressed, ideas are, shared with the others, ideas are in a way distributed among people. Those ideas are done actually through advertising. And what is advertising? Advertising is selling ideas as if, selling emotions as if, selling experiences, because all of these things are part and parcel of the advertisement industry. So, and there's nothing real there. when you see an advertisement, when you read an advertisement, then the thing is not there. It's only a description of something that is there. And actually we are living in the middle of descriptions. This is what postmodernism is. This thing was not there earlier, and this has occurred only in the last 50 or 60 years with the expansion of market, expansion of production, improvements in the techniques of production, and so on and so forth. The other books that are associated with his name are America, Seduction, and Cool Memories. Cool Memories, well, once again, he's playing with the word cool, otherwise there's nothing like cool memories or hot memories. So he's merely playing with the words. And seduction, I think, is a reference to the market. Market is the biggest, seductive factor in today's world. And see, for instance, earlier we bought things in order to meet certain needs and demands. But these days we buy things in order to just meet certain excuses for something. For instance, we have to be smart, and an excuse for being smart is that we should buy something that will make us appear smart. So that way, this seduction is happening all the time in life through the market. And when he says America, then one is slightly confused, because America is a very vast continent, and it's a big country. It's called the United States, which means there are lots of states. Each state may have its own culture. Each state may have its own social values, and those states are knit together in such a manner that there is a kind of diversity that is there in America. And in each state, there might be the big chunk of the market and the big chunk of the industry, the film industry or the advertisement industry or the newspaper industry. And all these industries, they are merely exchanging, sharing, distributing, and producing images. So maybe it is that which is America. So the Americans themselves, the American citizen himself or herself, doesn't know what is happening around him or her, because the whole thing appears to be a game of illusory things. So that's what it means by America, seduction, cool memories. Now the word memory is very problematic again, because when you talk of memories, then you are in a way getting away from your present. You go into the past, and that past impinging is all the time impinging on one's experiences and on one's attitudes. But then these memories might block the person from connecting with one's present, and therefore some kind of problem might occur. Another thinker, Stuart Hall, he very interestingly talked about 5 major advances in history. He's a postmodernist, but slightly more rational than the rest. And this person has given these 5 major advances. They are: 1, Marxism. Then second is Freud and psychoanalysis. The third is Foucault, the French philosopher. The fourth is feminism, which we have discussed already, and the new social movements. I was just having a look at this list of the 5 major advances, and I was also thinking of the word use here, like advances, which means that society has advanced through Marxism to something. If Marxism had not happened in the 19th century, then society would have remained stuck there. Then the same thing happened with respect to Freud and psychoanalysis. That Freud was the person who took emphasis away from religion and faith and started connecting one's faith with one's psychology. And if psychology is the issue, then of course religion disappears. Religion has no place in a world where psychologically things could be understood. Otherwise, there is mysticism, but Freud is very critical of mysticism. He always goes into the complexities of the mind and explains even those hidden fears and apprehensions that visit an individual all the time in the modern period particularly. Then Foucault, who is able to connect politics, literature, culture, etc. in such a manner that in the final analysis we come to know that all these things are interlinked, and that this interlinking throws some light on the world in which we live. At the same time, it makes things very problematic and difficult to grasp. Then feminism we discussed previously, I think in the last lecture, and under feminism a whole mass of people called women that has become active, that is becoming more and more conscious of the role that they have to play, etc., and to radicalize, revolutionize, transform the world in which they live, so that, for instance, patriarchy is taken care of, it is thrown out, and a kind of sense of equality is produced in society. But then this is an advance so far as Stuart Hall is concerned. And the last one is new social movements. Which are these new social movements? I was wondering, I was thinking about it. In India we have certain social movements, but they are not new in the sense in which he might be using the term. Maybe there is a movement of the blacks in America. Maybe there is a movement of women, in France, etc. Maybe there are, and these days the word subaltern is very important. So maybe there are some subalterns, some people on the margins who are asserting themselves. So these new social movements belong to them. I was thinking when I had a look at this list whether these are advances or they play some role even today. And I found that so far as postmodernism is concerned, it is in fact attacking all these 5 so-called advances. It is saying that there is nothing right with Marxism, there is nothing right with Freud and psychoanalysis, because when you have psychoanalysis, then that is the analysis of psychology, and analysis means rationality. So what is the postmodernism's take on rationality and analysis? That we'll come to grips with in the following discussion. Then Foucault's sense of culture, which is quite comprehensive, that is not merely an advance. That's a kind of an activity that will change our attitude to culture and politics. And postmodernism is in a way not merely responding to these so-called advances, but in a way it's coming to reject this thing. Then postmodernism doesn't bother about the woman question at all. It merely negates that question. And the new social movements, they are shown as unreal. Of course, as I explained in the beginning, that all these things that happen, these things happen at the level of illusion, at the level of an image. They seem to be there. There's a kind of virtuality about them, that virtually they are there, but actually they are not there. So we will come to that later on, but just see that these people, these scholars who are linked with postmodernism, they call them mere advances. They just mark them as having occurred at some point of time. But then the following discussion will tell us that postmodernism does not take a very serious cognizance of what is being suggested in these 5 advances. Is there something, Urvashi, that you would like to ask about this kind of?
Absolutely, sir. I was going to, in fact, intervene and ask you, say, the sense of doubt that when we talked about Baudrillard, that he's saying what is real is unreal and vice versa. So, when you described Stuart Hall's ideas, that he sees these ideas as, say, concepts, but he is going to negate them at some point. So, is he also bringing in that sense of doubt, which you said is one of the features or tenets of postmodernism?
Yes. All these thinkers are postmodernist thinkers, and they are driven by the idea that nothing in the world is real. It is all forged. Of course, it is forged in a certain sense, but then they say it is forged and it can be done away with, and society will not move even an inch forward, because now there is a kind of circularity that has been created in the context of market and the world today. So that's what is happening, and therefore the following discussion will make this point clear, that they seem to attack all the virtues or all the strengths or all the important points which are suggested by these so-called advances For them, they are advances. For us, maybe there are certain important segments of history which pushed us forward, and we should remain, inspired by these things and take them forward. But these people seem to reject all the five, in spite of grudgingly calling them advances.
Yes, sir.
So,
So despite saying that we are rational, they are not.
they'll
not
be
so
going against
rational.
rationality. They'll be
Yes.
going against analysis. They'll be
Right.
going against reality. We have discussed realism. So far as they are concerned, there is nothing real, and there is no realism at all. So now after this, we come to the point where some certain aspects have been highlighted by this trend which started in the 1980s. Now the first principle, and it's quite simple. I took help from one or two books which are available. They have summarized these discussions very well. For instance, there is a book by an Indian scholar, I think it's called Literary Theory by Pramod Nair. It's a good book, and I took a few points from there to explain things and give my own perspective. So, for the first thing that is there is postmodernity is a social, economic, and political state. State means condition. It's a social state, it's an economic state, it's a political state. What is the social state? The social state is that the whole thing appears to be all the time impinging on our sense of freedom, and society that way is becoming a riddle for us. That's the social state, and this is the state today. What postmodernism would say about the social state today is that the state that has emerged after the Second World War, the state that has formed itself in a crystallized way in the 1970s and 80s, that state is being addressed. The social state, for instance, people are not living in a place to which they belonged, where they were born. They shift. When they shift to a particular place, then from there also they can travel to another, or maybe some other people can travel to that place. So what kind of a society is it that we are facing at that point of time? So it's a very confused kind of a state that we have in the modern world. You look at a metropolitan center, you look at a city, and you find that what existed 5 years ago is totally changed today, because in the meantime either one has oneself shifted, or somebody else has shifted to the place and made it absolutely new. So that's the kind of a state, the social state that we confront. Then the economic state. There was a time when we believed in saving. There was a time when we believed in some kind of economic stability, prices, etc. But these days, economy and prices and all other things, they are so subtle, and people are playing games in the field of economics, and one doesn't know where things are heading. So nobody can control now prices. Nobody can control the economic trends. Nobody can control the capacity of production of things, etc. And the kind of planning that was there in the early 20th century in socialist societies, and also in the capitalist societies, that planning also has gone for a toss. And today the economic condition is absolutely ambivalent. It is unclear. It is subtle, and it is beyond the reach of not merely the ordinary citizen, but even the expert. And the political state, where once again the same thing happens. So that is what postmodernity is, so far as postmodernism is concerned. That today there is a total destruction of stability in society, economics, and politics. So this state, that's the first part. Secondly, postmodernism. Postmodernity first, and then postmodernism. Ism means ideas, of course. So postmodernism is the view and theory aiming to understand and interpret this state. So the postmodernist theory actually is the theorizing about the present condition. That's what is meant. So if things are uncertain, then the theory of uncertainty will emerge out of it, and that is what postmodernism is. Am I clear, Urvashi, about this, or should I explain further?
No, absolutely, sir. That makes sense. And so you say that theory is theorizing about the present condition. So wouldn't, as the situation changes, as the condition changes from being present at one point to another, so then the theory also changes at certain points, sir?
And because the state is changing all the time, therefore theory also will keep on changing all the time.
All the time.
And you can't take it seriously. That's why you have to game. That's why you have to play, because on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, you see the changes in the market. If you have a look at the TV screen, even in a less developed country like India, you will find that every second the Sensex is either going up or going down. So that's what the condition is. So the same condition exists also for postmodernism. For theory. So all these things, are being theorized today in today's circumstances. That is what is meant. So you understood it correctly. Then the second thing, and just see the language of the message that postmodernism extends to people. It says, modernism mourned the fragmentation of experience and moved towards nostalgia. I read again, modernism mourned the fragmentation of experience and moved towards nostalgia. That was 1920s and 30s. People were not happy. They were not shown as happy. They were shown as, ridden with anxiety, etc., because their experience could not be linked with something else. It was a fragmented experience. And people, felt very unhappy. They felt very helpless. In fact, a person like Sartre, in the initial phase of his writing, he was an existentialist. He would say that life is a sickness unto death. A famous phrase, used by Sartre. So in a way, it was a kind of mourning. It was a kind of sadness that occurred because experience had ceased to be totalized, had ceased to be, ceased to be seen in one particular wholeness, and therefore people started moving, thinking of the times gone by, because then life was integrated, then life was was comprehensible in its totality. But in the modern time, that is the 1920s, around the First World War, a little later than that, then modernism gave a sense of sadness and a sense of mourning to the viewer and to the citizen. And then comes the punchline in the description: postmodernism celebrates fragmentation. So it doesn't mourn. So now you should be happy with what you were unhappy with earlier. This is a very assertive and a very clearly, different kind of interpretation of the idea of fragmentation. So if one is facing a fragmented reality in one's neighborhood, in one's home, in the relationship with one's husband or wife, with one's relationship with one's friends, etc., then that fragmentation, if one doesn't have a kind of link with one's studies as a student, there's no link between the education and the society outside. Within the education there are parts and there's no link with them. Everything is fragmented. So we are supposed to be disturbed by that. But then postmodernism will say, no, don't be disturbed by all this lack of connection. Celebrate it. Be happy about it. So this kind of a thing is very contentious. But then postmodernism celebrates fragmentation. It gives the entire value to this and says the more fragmented we are, the better it is. Therefore, be happy about it. So see the kind of interpretation that they're giving to fragmentation in the present state. Then the third thing is, and I'll Urvashi come back to you again to respond. Postmodernism is irreverent towards established icons. Irreverent towards established icons. So whatever is supposed to be good by society, whatever has established itself as valuable, that should be considered. That should be observed and considered with irreverence. Don't pay any respect to it. Try to examine it. Try to throw it out. Try to negate it. Try to reject it, but never take it seriously. Now, making irreverence a kind of a value in society may be good for those who are playing games. But life is not just a matter of a game. Of course, I'm not sure about the situation that exists in the developed societies. I've never been there. But then in India, if you are irreverent towards your great leaders of the past, suppose you are irreverent towards Gandhi, suppose you are irreverent towards Nehru, or you are irreverent towards the great writers of yesterday, people like Tolstoy, or in India Tagore and Premchand, etc., if you are irreverent about them, then how do you learn anything from them? And what do you make of your own life? So this kind of a thing is put forward as valuable and a kind of a factor that should be always accepted. So postmodernism is reverent towards established icons. So whatever icons you have, if somebody made a contribution to life and progress, then that icon is to be suspected for being wrong or immoral or unacceptable for us.
Sir, we could also say that these say the theorists of postmodernism also are in a sense established icons, and we should also disregard them.
That's a good comment on this. And they won't mind, because when you are agreeing with them, then they will say, okay, disregard us. But that's not the point. The point is that they are giving ideas to people to become irreverent in general. So your attitude should never be of seriousness. It should never be of serious engagement with things. And in that case, if you are treating them with reverence, if you throw out their books, they won't be sad or what, because they would have already published their books and sold them and got the money. So they are quite happy. This is in fact the state of mind of a trader. The trader has produced a thing, or has bought a thing, has distributed in the market, has made his money, and after that, if you throw away the thing, then the person is not unhappy. He says, okay, I made my money. And you have, in the malls these days, these sales happening at a big scale. They already made their money and they can sell it at 80% discount. So that is possible. So they have somehow become irreverent to themselves, and which is the tragedy of humankind today, that if this kind of irreverence takes over, and we become irreverent even about ourselves, as you rightly point out, that these people are also now icons, and you can throw them out, then it's a permanent damage that has been done to the the idea of accepting certain things in preference to others. So irreverence is the value there. The next one is, according to postmodernism, there is no opposition between high and low culture. So low culture is as important as high culture. So morality and immorality, low taste and high taste, good values and bad values, they can't be interpreted differently. They can't be put one against the other. In fact, according to postmodernism, the low value will also give us insights into the reality of our time, and therefore it should be upheld as something very precious. So high and low culture, high and low literature, high and low art, high and low thinking, high and low philosophy, all these things have to be kept in the same basket for us to look at and preserve. Then I'm just taking up these points for explanation of postmodernism. Against universal and overarching ideal. Now this is important, because this is a political statement that is being made by postmodernism. Against universal and overarching ideal, postmodernism opposes grand narratives and is anti-foundationalist. So let me explain first the grand narrative. Now the grand narrative is that narrative which binds the society together. And when you bind a society together, then there is a genuine risk, that in the process of binding, you will be doing some harm to certain lesser areas of life. That is possible. But there are grand narratives, and if they exist, how do we reject them? For instance, there is a grand narrative of the market today, and this narrative started emerging in the 19th century itself. We have discussed it in the other theoretical discussions in the past, and we know that a kind of market that existed in the 18th century ceased to be there in that form in the 19th century, and the nation states were made first. Those nation states made the whole country a nation. No part of the country could be outside what was called the nation. So it was a kind of nationalism was a grand narrative. Later on, in the 20th century, imperialism became a grand narrative, and in order to counter imperialism, one could not stand alone and fight it. There had to be a narrative which would go against the narrative of imperialism, and that narrative was found to be socialism in the early 20th century. And socialism united, particularly in the case of Russia, Soviet Union, and the union would definitely mean that there were different parts of the country and they became a union. And when they became a union, they became a force to reckon with. And they were able to challenge what is called imperialism in the early 20th century. So it was a fight between one kind of a grand narrative and another. The earlier grand narrative was that of capitalism and imperialism. The second grand narrative was that of socialism. Now it is possible that when capitalism emerged, it destroyed certain peculiarities of life in its own process of becoming what it was. It is possible that certain people in Russia at that point of time would have been stopped from evolving further because there were demands of the country which was supposed to be more important. So it is possible. But these people then say today that there should be no grand narrative. There should only be mini narratives. So that kind of a thing is very political, which means that do not unite against capitalism. Do not unite against the West. Do not unite against anything. And if you don't unite, then you don't practice a grand narrative. So remain confined to your own individual lives or small groups of things, and that's what I'm now connecting it with what we read earlier about one of the 5 advances, that there have to be new social movements. So which means that new social movements have to be of a limited scale, because when you don't have a grand narrative, then you will only talk of small narratives, mini narratives. So it's a political statement, and if you don't get united, then how do you fight? I believe that in India's case, if the grand narrative of nationalism had not united this country from 1910 to 1947 or so, then we wouldn't have been able to fight effectively and throw out the British imperialism from the country. So these days this kind of a demand is there from postmodernists who say that grand narratives are very oppressive. Of course, they are in some cases oppressive, and there the care should be taken. But that you throw the child with the bathwater, then of course it's a different issue altogether. The next point: the representation does not align with truth, and is nothing more than a game of representation. This is literary theory. Earlier we were talking about society, but now we talk about literary theory. Representation means writing. So when you write a novel, when you write a poem, then do not write about truth. Representation does not align with truth, and nothing more than a game of representation. So you are only playing a game when you are writing a novel. You are, and you should play a game. When you are writing a poem, then play a game with words in the poem, and never talk about the truth, because representation and truth are two different things. So if you are representing something, that is your own kind of experience, and that experience has not much to do with what actually happened, but with your own interpretation. This is about literary theory. So one doesn't know whether one should look for truth, one should look for reality, one should look for applicability, one should look for learning, one should look for getting education out of literature, if representation is supposed to be only a game. Postmodernism collapses distinctions between genres and conventions. Very interesting again. Literary theory tells us that we should talk about the forms of literature. There is a form called the novel form, there is a form called the short story form, there is a drama form, there is an epic form, and these forms, of course, nobody has consciously drawn these forms, but in history, they were thrown up by the collective efforts of different writers, and these forms and genres and conventions, they came into being. But postmodernism says, do not make a distinction between a novel and a poem, or a poem and a play, because these distinctions between genres and conventions, they have to collapse. And in fact, there are books in the 20th century. Some books were written by existentialists also. I think Albert Camus wrote a book. It was called not The Outsider, but a book like that, where he brings in poetry, he brings in drama, he brings in narrative, etc., and he is able to write something. It makes sense, there is no doubt about that. But when you theoretically put it as something where there should be no distinction between one kind of writing and another in terms of genres and conventions, then of course there will be total anarchy in literature. So one would not know what one is saying. And conventions, for instance, there is a convention of beginning in a novel. How do you begin a novel? So even the modernists, started experimenting with the beginning. And there are novels, written by James Joyce, which begin in the middle of a sentence, and they end also in the middle of a sentence. So there is no beginning and there is no end. But these things only trivialize, in my opinion. Maybe I am wrong. In my opinion, they trivialize the convention of starting something and ending something. Because when you end it at a particular place, and I bring in Aristotle here to say that unless you have a proper kind of beginning and a proper kind of ending, and you have a specific movement in the work of literature, then you can't create meaning. So in a way, because the purpose of the postmodernist is not to create a meaning, not to create truth, but in fact to go against the truth and treat it reverently. Therefore, there should be no specific attention given to the genres and conventions. And therefore, postmodernist writing would be, now one can say this, its hallmarks are parody. Never talk seriously. Take a book, an old book, and start parodying it. You would see that in the theatre of the absurd, such experiments happen in the 1950s and 60s. There are plays, which parody Hamlet's, Shakespeare's plays, and there are a whole series of plays written in the style of Shakespeare and parodying him. Then there have to be, they say, indirect references, quotes, myths, fairy tales, etc. So write fairy tales, write about myths only, quote from others, and then you mean something different from them, and keep playing like this. That is what writing is supposed to be under the postmodern argument. So please react to this.
Sir, I would like to say that in this sort of an argument, all the rationality is sort of breaking down. All the rules are being broken and saying don't follow any rules, and but they are also again offering their own rules and regulations. Say this, are they trying to say that in a work of writing you should put parody also, and then in the same place you should quote from somebody, and you could have myths and fairy tales all existing in the same work of writing?
It can be in the same work, it can be in different writings also, but parody itself means that you are basing it on critiquing somebody else, laughing at somebody else. So laughing is the value, critiquing is the value, but offering the alternative is not the value. With the moment you offer an alternative in writing, in parody there can't be, I'm merely mimicking what you say, that's a parody. So you mimic Shakespeare and don't say anything of your own. That is what parody means. And this way, because they say that nothing can be said, and then they say that representation has to be only a game. It has never to be a serious statement.
So did they offer a reason why they are saying such things, that why there should be no distinction between genre and conventions?
You see, they maybe they are not using the word should, and if I use the word, then perhaps I should correct myself. But they say that the world is such today that nothing means anything. Market is such, the world is such, it's changing every moment, etc. And that life has lost all meaning, arts also have lost all meaning, and what you can do is merely laugh. And you laugh because you accept all that has come. If life has become fragmented, if you don't belong to yourself psychologically, if you don't belong to yourself emotionally, etc., there is a kind of alienation and self-alienation, etc., then enjoy it, accept it. So this seems to be the philosophy.
Right. Yes.
That's how it is. The next one, postmodernism treats with suspicion rationality and rational explanations. So rational explanations are those, which go point-wise, which are connected. One thing flows from another, maybe wrongly, maybe rightly. That's a different thing. You can always point out, that something is rational or less rational or inconsistent. But then these people say that rational explanation should always be doubted. So What should not be doubted is irreverence. So far as they are concerned. If you are irreverent, then people should accept you. If you are using parody, if you are mimicking others, if you are laughing at others, if you are cracking jokes at the cost of others, if you are quoting others, irreverently, then of course, yeah, you are supposed to be a profound person. But if you talk seriously in literature, in writing, etc., then, and this is what is actually happening in life. For instance, I'm not totally rejecting this. I'm not saying that it doesn't make any sense, because what is happening these days, particularly in the visual medium, is that you have sometimes a war is depicted, a war scene is depicted. Actually, some countries being attacked, and the entire thing is being presented on the screen as if it's a game going on. I hope the viewers, you would also know that when Iraq was attacked by America, then the whole thing was shown on the TV. The bomb would start from one place, it will travel, then it will go, it will explode, and people will die. So the actual population was being attacked, and we in the cozy surroundings of our homes and drawing rooms, etc., bedrooms, we were watching it as if a game was going on. And immediately after the scene, there will be some advertisement. So what is the connection between the advertisement and the scene that was going on? So the whole thing appeared to be a game. So in a way, postmodernism takes cognizance of this reality and says that things have lost all sense of meaning. Now the media is not presenting any perspective to us, a consistent perspective that can guide us. What they are doing is they are selling news. They are creating news, they are producing news, they are manufacturing news, and they are selling it. And when they do so, then one good is as valuable or as cheap as another. And that is what, and because the condition is such, therefore that condition should be theorized. So it is that theorization of the condition where things don't connect with one another, they are fragmented. Then postmodernism is presentist. That's a good word again. Never think about the past, never think about the future. Or in the other sense, now that you have made me conscious that perhaps the word should not be used, therefore what one can say is that today, as people living in society as citizens of today, we are guided only by the present. There is no reference in today's market about what happened 10 years ago, and of course there can't be a reference about what's going to happen tomorrow. So live in the present only. So postmodern is presentist. So in a way, history is being attacked. So history means past. History means that continuum, which began at some point of time and continued up to the present. And you can understand, your present. I can understand my present only through its historical background. But then presentism means that there is no history. In fact, all those 5 advances now they are being systematically negated here. Rationality is being negated, history also is being negated. So remain all the time in the present, because that's what the market does. That's what the world does. It says no to totalizing narratives and meta narratives. So those narratives, that people should get together, that there can be a combining factor. That narrative, that things start here, that they can build up, then they can come to a conclusion. That narrative should be rejected. What should replace it is the individuality of the person and the moment, and that moment is the moment of the present. Now there are 10 minutes to wind up these things, so I now pick up a bit of speed to go through these different points, and I'm taking the example of Lyotard as a philosopher of postmodernism. And I say that the point he is making about knowledge is a point that should be considered seriously. For instance, he is talking about mercantilism of knowledge. Now, there was a time when knowledge would actually inspire people to work in a certain direction with a certain goal in mind. But these days, knowledge is being manufactured, and it is being manufactured so that it can be sold, it can be distributed, and it can be just scattered all around and people get informed. So viewers, knowledge of society today, knowledge of politics today, knowledge of culture today, all that knowledge is not that is coming from thinkers and philosophers. It is coming from those people who are experts in the production of knowledge, and those people work not according to their own conscience, not according to their own choices. They work because they are funded by the state, or they are funded by the private agencies to produce knowledge in a certain manner. Of course, there are examples where medical knowledge is funded by certain institutions. Then certain drugs are popularized on the strength of money and advertisement. They are sold, later on they are found to be poisonous, so they are withdrawn, but then new drugs are brought in again. So in medical science, in social sciences, in science proper, etc., everywhere the research is being in a way manufactured to a large extent with the help and strength of money. So this is actually happening in the world today. So you can't say that postmodernism doesn't make any sense at all, because this is what is happening today, that research, for instance, to destroy humanity, research to use gas, research to use knowledge of biology, etc., to destroy whole communities and societies. This research is being funded by certain agencies in the world today, and which is called, and literature of a certain kind is being popularized. You know that awards are, whether it's the big award of or the biggest of all awards, the Nobel Prize, or some other awards, they are in a way being used politically by certain agencies to tell writers what to write. So if there is a Nobel Prize winning author, then everybody would write like that. So in the next 10 or 15 years, all of them would write like existentialists, etc. Sometimes, in order to make the Nobel Prize legitimate, maybe there's some book is given prize for its true value, but after one there will be 10 more which will sell the fake kind of literary thought and a kind of literary experience. So this is a trend that is supposed to be first recognized and then fought, resisted, and that is called mercantilism of knowledge, which is happening today. That knowledge these days is not a pursuit of philosophers. Knowledge is something that is being funded by state agencies or non-state agencies, independent agencies, and it is they who decide what will be thought, what will be knowledge like. So this is a very profound argument, and it's a recognition of the reality in which we live, and postmodernism has definitely drawn our attention to the trend of mercantilism of knowledge. Then there are, now all these words that I'm going to speak here, and they all go against the basic words of those 5 advances that I talked about in the beginning. I talked about feminism, talked about Marxism, psychoanalysis, the new social movements, etc. And now see these words that are used, and this will, viewers, also add to your vocabulary and give you very pompous phrases and words, so that if you want to really drown people in the sound of these words, you will be able to impress them very well by your supposedly intellectual acumen. Words are, the third verse is undecidable. So you can't decide about it, but you are using the word fracta. Fracta is fractions. Delegitimization. Now the meaning is clear. There are certain things which are to be accepted. They are legitimate. You have to accept them because they are real or they are rational, etc. But no, if they are rational, then attack them. Delegitimize them. Don't allow them to remain legitimate. Agonistics. That is, you just go into the resistance mode individually. So do not talk with anybody else about making a common opinion. You just individually protest. That is what is important. Mini narratives, I used this word earlier. Paganism, now don't go about culture, go about paganism, which is opposite of culture. Sublime, not actual, not real, but what is transcendental, which is above, which is not near the ground. unpresentable in presentation itself. Very good. So if in the presentation you present the unpresentable. If it is unpresentable, this is a game of words. That certain things are unpresentable, but you present them. Okay. Actuality not opposed to artificiality. So take them as the same. Artificial and actual are actually the same so far as this particular theory is concerned. Then different, it's not different. It is different as incommensurability. So things don't go parallel with each other, and therefore they are different. Sweetness as suppleness. So supple and sweet, they are two different things, but no, you bring them together. Speed, ability to metamorphose, simulation, that I have already explained, illusionary reality, hyper reality, and the list is endless. It goes on and on and on. So I don't have to go through all the words. Then I just give one more quote and wind up the discussion. This is from Lyotard again. A work can become modern, he says, a literary work that is, a work can become modern only if it is first postmodern. Already he is giving a definition that if you have to write something useful, meaningful, if you have to write something meaningful, of course you would not say, if you have to write something which will sell, which will be successful, then it has to be first postmodern. So don't write modern stuff, don't write anything about the past, write about the present condition, so it has to be first postmodern. Postmodernism thus understood is not modernism at its end, but in the nascent stage, and this state is constant. That whatever is going to become, you see, in our experience, in our observation, what is inherent, it is that which will emerge tomorrow. So catch that which will emerge tomorrow. And this kind of process about emerging, this will always remain there, which means that you are talking only about today, and you are talking about that today which will emerge sometime later. And because this is constantly going on, therefore you will never be able to reach the truth. Therefore just play games. So viewers, it's a very important trend of today. This has come from the West, and this has attacked all different values and forms of literature, and it is quite common in the Western world. I don't think it's very, very common in India at the moment, but there are certain writers who call themselves postmodern in India also, and they write like this. But then I end with an observation, not an observation, but just a little comment by Frederick Jameson, who is a thinker, a rational thinker of the present era in America. He wrote a whole book about postmodernism, and he called this particular trend as that which can be described as late capitalism. He used this word. There's a book by him where he calls it late capitalism. So when capitalism has come to a state of disintegration, when it has ceased to be relevant to the conditions of life, then it occurs. It happens in the form of what can be called inconstant and fickle kind of a form, and therefore it has to be recognized first as such and then rejected. So let's use this word, viewers, that it's a trend of late capitalism. The answer lies, perhaps, Frederick Jameson would say, by replacing late capitalism with something that is more human, that which is more meaningful, which unites people together, which creates a sense of friendship and solidarity among them, and makes this world a better world, not a world where knowledge is a question of mercantilism. So this is what I usually say in the context of postmodernism.
Thank you so much, sir, for talking about postmodernism and making this a very interesting lecture with the wonderful discussion we had. And I'd like to tell the viewers that in our lectures, as part of this lecture series next month, we shall talk about post-colonialism, and also again then in one lecture we are going to sum up literary theory. So please keep track of that. And with this I'd like to close the lecture, and thanks sir for being here. Thank you so much sir, we appreciate it, and have a wonderful day.